Some Alice in Chains. I'm a man in the box.
I'm trying to work that into my build too. It's so fun. We got waves right in front of us. To your right.
Oh, you gotta go over there.
He died.
Alcanzamos.
You got fighting people already?
He died too. He died too. He died too.
Yeah, they're dead.
Yeah, buddy.
They flagged when one of their dudes. I'm cutting the rope.
Do it.
Vamos, Pancor.
Is this the same server or new server?
Yep, same.
Oh, shit.
It's raining men. Hallelujah.
Awesome,
It's
dude.
raining men. Perfect talent for another perfect talent.
Right. You guys. Don't do it, buddy. Poof. Got another one. One more. No. Second left.
Get
You got two.
schmelted.
Oh, it's a drone.
You jumped in the wrong place. Ah! Fire got me. Hey, buddy.
Ooh, leg.
How the fuck you gonna walk side and you don't take it?
It's called Berserk and Clutch.
You don't got no fucking
running that much armor, that's so...
that's bullshit. Get the fuck out of here.
GG, man. It's just a game. It's just a game. Adapt.
Season, man. It's
Adapt. What is up, Gorilla Nation? It is Relentless here, bringing you yet another Division 2 build video. If you happen to be new to the channel, or you're just enjoying the content, then please be sure to ground and pound that like and subscribe button. Also, reach up there, trigger the bell, and turn on post notifications, so that way you never miss a live stream or a video that is uploaded. Well, I figured I would kind of turn this into a series as far as the different configurations when it comes to Berserk Clutch. I've already did one with Negotiators, I've already did the standard with a Fenris chest piece, and so I wanted to try something different and not really utilize Composure or all these other basic talents that everybody's running Berserk with, but I want to take it back to talents that were originally in the game from the beginning and then tweak them a little bit, and of course utilizing perfect talents that will actually synergize with all the other pieces as well, so that way I can get a good strong cohesiveness with all moving parts in this build. So here we go. It is 3-piece Wyvernware, 2-piece 511, 1 Murakami. Now the premise here is that once your armor is popped, of course, you're going to get all the benefits of damage from a full-blown Berserk. Also, when your armor is popped at the same time, if you're in the vicinity of, say, Seekers or Hives, then Cloak is going to actually send out a Disrupt. And then in turn, while I'm critting with Berserk and Clutch, and with Clutch you gain percentage of health back for each of your crits, and that'll multiply it because the 2-piece of 511 gives you an additional 10% of incoming healing. So it's essentially turning 20% into 30. So let's hop into the individual pieces first, starting with those 511. Now, Perfect Clutch does come on 511. I haven't found one, but I've made this build in preparation of when I do find a 511 with Perfect Clutch. And that'll give me an additional 5% healing when it comes to my crits. But this particular pair had 10% SMG damage and 4% crit chance. Now typically most people would run Alps Summit here because it has an additional mod slot by way of offensive that you can get some extra damage in. This is nothing wrong with it, it's just a different variation, and when it comes to things like this, you have to give up and sacrifice that mod slot in order for something along the lines of, like the 511, because it does have Perfect Clutch on it, so you're sacrificing that offensive mod slot for the likes of 1-piece, and if you're going to run 1-piece 511, then you might as well run 2 because of that 10% extra incoming healing. Now on to the other piece. The only thing I would change about this is, of course, higher stat rolls. That's part of min-maxing, but 22,119 health ain't really that bad, and of course 11% crit hit chance. And instead of Creeping Death, which is this null and void because it requires 4 or less, I would rather have Concussion here. And Concussion is when landing a headshot, then you get a I believe it's 15% headshot damage for 2 seconds since I'm utilizing an SMG, and then 5 seconds for marksman rifles. So it would benefit me more than just running Creeping Death, but until I find one with concussion on it, then this is, better than all other pieces that I've come across, because it did have a good roll of health on it, and I was able to put 11% crit chance. Now on to the only piece of Murakami. It's because it gives you 8% health. This backpack has 34,708 health, 6.5% crit damage, and 3.5% weapon damage with Vital and Spark. Spark is damaging enemies with skills or explosive, does 15% weapon damage for 15 seconds. And the only utility mod slot other than offensive mod slots would be this one. So I had to ask myself what would be best in slot for what I have. And so my best, since it's only one, would be any kind of additional reload speed. Because basically, if you're not shooting, you're not critting. You're not critting, you're not self-healing. So the faster you can reload, the faster that you can actually, self-heal by your crits. Now to the 3-piece Wyvernware, starting with the chest. It's a Wyvernware. It has 2 offensive mod slots. And as the attributes, I have 59,596 health, 7.5% crit chance, and 6% weapon damage. And of course, Berserk plus 8% weapon damage for every 20% of max armor depleted. The only difference between regular Berserk and Perfect Berserk is 2%, which is you get 10% weapon damage for every 20% of max armor that is depleted with a Perfect Berserk. So essentially you're getting 10% more weapon damage for having a Perfect Berserk. But there is one for sale in the Dark Zone West, but it is trash. I know a lot of content creators are like, oh, go buy it now, go buy it. You can find others just farming for it. Trust me, because it only has 20,000 health, I believe, 2 offensive attributes, neither is weapon damage, and it does have an offensive mod slot, and I believe destructive on the second talent. I could be wrong, but yeah, if you put health on it, you're missing out on weapon damage. So if you can put 15% weapon damage on it, you're gaining more weapon damage than you're actually going to benefit from that extra 10% by running Perfect Berserk. So in the long run, just because it says perfect, yeah, if you get good rolls on it that already has weapon damage, then of course it's going to be better. But the one that's currently in DZ West, that's why I didn't make a video on it, because it's trash in my opinion. And of course, Wyvernware has 2 offensive mod slots compared to the Fenris. The Fenris only has 1. So the one offensive mod slot that I had to sacrifice for a 511 instead of the Alps, I gained back because Fenris only has 1 offensive mod slot. This has 2. So in a sense, I didn't really sacrifice anything, because if I was running a Fenris, I would only have 1 offensive mod slot, but with Wyvernware, you have 2. So it's a give and take, but luckily, Wyvernware does have those 2. And both of these, as you can see, I get 5.5% SMG damage in one, and then 5% in the other. Now moving on to the holster. It is 41,201 health as my attribute. I think it gets upward to like 50k. At one time, I believe I had one at 49,000, so I could actually essentially gain 8,000 to 9,000 more health. That'll definitely put me over 250. And if you look at all the max rolls of health, I'm only probably 15,000, I would say, off from total getting the max amount of rolls as far as when it comes to health values on pieces. And of course, the Perfect Bloodlust. I sacrificed the one Suck Me Off piece for Perfect Bloodlust, because one Suck Me Off gives you 10% SMG damage, but Bloodlust, just by swapping to your weapon, either back to your primary or switching to your secondary, gives you 20% weapon damage for 5 seconds. So all you gotta do is start blazing away with your primary, and then once you want to finish somebody off or get that extra hump over the mountain, so that way you can finish taking them down with that extra burst damage, Bloodlust definitely comes in handy, because the extra 20% just for switching. So that's why I have the Vector as my secondary with that 1320 RPM, and then it gives it another 20% weapon damage boost to finish them off. And it also has an offensive mod slot, and I get 5.5% total weapon damage from these mod slot in the holster. Now on to the knee pads. Most people are going with Composure on the knee pads. It gives you 10% weapon damage for being in cover, but let's face it, your Berserk clutch build, you're not going to spend too much time in cover. So I think it's better utilized to have cloaked, but it's also best, I think, in my opinion, to actually have both. One as your primary, PvP build, but depending on your circumstances and who you come across, then you could come across somebody that, you know, utilizing composure and getting that extra 10% for being in cover could be more beneficial to you because your team that's pushing you aren't really pushing you. So popping cloaked is not going to do you any good because their skills aren't, you know, directly, you know, in the vicinity of you unless they threw their hive, you know, over there where your group is posted up at. In that case, then once your armor's popped, then it's going to disrupt all nearby skills for 10 seconds, which definitely comes in handy when people push you. And then it has an offensive mod slot with 5.5% total SMG damage going to it. So that's basically the premise. I get the 10% extra incoming healing for the 2-piece 511. That moves that 20% I get from clutch to 30 essentially. And then if I had perfect clutch, then that would give me another 5% on top of that, which really comes in handy when you can synergize it well with clutch. And since you want your armor popped anyways when you're running berserk, then that's why cloaked synergizes with it, because both require your armor to be cracked in order for it to proc. And I have 245.6k health, which is not too shabby. I can probably hit 260 if I, you know, have all those perfect rolls on those pieces. And since I had to roll health on it to begin with, then it'll be easy, you know, switching, you know, that out once those pieces come available. Now, when it comes to weapons, it's basically your, you know, I would say personal preference. I run with a squad that likes, you know, the Hive Seeker. So that's why I keep the MP5 with Sadist on it. 22.1k. But it deals 30% weapon damage to bleeding enemies, and after you kill 3, the 4th one that you hit automatically applies bleed to them, and of course Allegro, and those are my mods as you see them. And of course my secondary would be the Vector SBR 9mm, 14.4, which is once I crit, I'm critting for over 20, and then when Bloodlust is procced, I'm hitting for over 23k, and then if you add Spark, that 15% on top of that, then I'm over 25, and then of course when you got to count Berserk in, then that pushes me well over 30. So all in all, even though the base damage looks minuscule and small, when it comes to crits and everything synergizing and working together, it's definitely a beast as you've seen in the gameplay, and you can mow people down pretty easily. Now on to the stat sheet. Starting with that MP5, as you can see, 60% crit chance, 43 crit damage, 50 headshot damage, and it's the same as the Vector. When it comes to all weapon damage bonuses, 16%. I do have 17 if I want to switch to an AR, which is that just essentially switching out the offensive mod slots. I have SMG damage for the likes of ones that have AR. Prefer an LMG, then switch them out to an LMG. You don't have to swap out any pieces in particular. But if you can manage to work, you know, one of those type brand sets in, depending on what weapon you're using, then you can get additional 10% weapon damage. But it falls to you still will have to sacrifice something and to gain something, and that's the way it should be with any build. In order to have to gain something as one area, you're going to have to lose it in another. And the kryptonite for Berserk clutch builds, as I've already told you before, when going into the likes of any kind of PvP battles, is status effects, seeker mines, or really anything that explodes, because that will cause stagger. And when a clutch berserk is staggered, they can't shoot, so they can't crit, and if they can't crit, they can't self-heal. So it's very effective against them. Or utilizing range if you know they're running SMGs, you know, mid-range if they're running ARs, but ARs is downfall if you get up in their face. With the SMG, you're going to out DPS them. So it just depends on, and the reason why I put out the build of paper, rock, and scissors, because that's essentially what the PvP and builds have come to, and always have been, I should say, is there should be a counter for everything, and you shouldn't be able to have everything in a particular build without having to sacrifice something. That's why you don't see too many Berserk clutch builds running hazard protection, because it takes up a blue defensive Lego, and you have to have 4 or less in order to run clutch. So essentially, let's say if it's the least of the 4 pieces of health, then it has to be either the knee pads or mask. So essentially you get up 20 to 30k health in order to have hazard protection. But it can be done, but that's part of the game where you have to sacrifice in order to gain, the way it should be. But this synergizes really, really well. 50% pulse resistance, 20% protection from elites, also helps out in the dark zone with all those pesky elites. And of course that additional 10% extra incoming healing because of the 2-piece 511. And as far as told you, no status effects prevention at all. which is typical for any Berserk clutch build unless they sacrifice in order to gain something. But that's going to basically sum it up. I hope you enjoyed the gameplay. I hope you enjoyed the build. It's something different and not really typical of what everybody else is running. I've seen people like 3 DNH and of course a perfect Berserk Fenris, or different combinations, but yet haven't really seen any really on the Utoposphere utilize the 2-piece 511 and then of course accompanying it with 3-piece Wyvernware with all those offensive mod slots. And of course, any Murakami 1-piece is always a go-to when you're looking for whatever fits that 6th and final piece to your puzzle. But with any Berserk build, it's basically a roadmap. So you can tweak it as you see fit, play it to your personal preference. This is more or less to mine, and it actually really comes in nice and handy, having that extra incoming healing. But like I said, Berserk clutch, that's the destination, and there's so many roads, highways in order to get to the destination. That's why I called it more or less the Lingchi, and that translates to death of 1,000 cuts, because essentially, metaphorically, Berserk clutch, there's 1,000 ways to do a Berserk and clutch build. So as it updates and I get more min maxed, then these stats will get better, and if you already have better stats on pieces, then your numbers will reflect that. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope I didn't ramble on too much. Be sure to ground and pound that like and subscribe button, and I appreciate all the love and support. We are well on our way to 11K. Appreciate you guys, and we'll see you later.